Yobachi 2007 back at you again with another one for men's mind state and cultural reviews. And we're going to take a look at this Diddy situation after he's been sentenced on Friday to about 4 years and 2 months, 50 months in prison for his convictions on what is called the Mann Act and what is basically transportation to engage in prostitution. So he transported people for the purposes of prostitution, and that's what he was convicted of, 2 counts, and that's what he's being sentenced on. Let's take a look at some of this video roll that came in uh, from a couple of places, from the news services. So this is his mom entering the courtroom for sentencing. She's 70 or so. This is one of his sons with three of his daughters going hand in hand into the courtroom for the sentencing. Then we got this man pro who did the freak offs with Cassidy and Puff. And he's basically outside of the courtroom during sentencing, giving this interview. He's one of the alleged victims because he was the prostitute who was paid to do this stuff with them and who testified. And here's what he has to say.
I do believe justice is time served. And that's because I'm strict on what the law is. His conviction is transportation, and it's kind of hard to wrap multiple years or long periods in jail for paying for transportation.
So did he just get convicted of transportation? Is that what it's about? Is that what the Mann Act, the violation of which Diddy was convicted for 2 felonies? Is it simply that he paid for somebody's transportation and that's a crime? That's I would suggest to you that's not the crime. And let's go take a look at it so that we can understand. That's the value that we're going to bring in this video. It's understanding what really happened here. But before we do that, I'm trying to figure out what's going on with this circle letter or number on this guy's chest over Diddy's shoulder right there. Is this guy like one of the Fantastic Four or something? I'm not getting why he's got this circle letter on his chest in this drawing. What's up with that? Okay, let's take a look here at what this conviction is really all about. And along with the value that we'll bring in understanding the case and what the conviction really was, the other value is understanding how we can take lessons away from Combs' downfall for other men to understand what we can do to make sure that we don't fall into the traps that can lead us off of our purpose and losing things in life that we'd otherwise not want to lose. So before we get into this charges, would you like, subscribe, and notification bell if you haven't done that already? We appreciate you engaging with these posts because that really helps us to keep the channel going. That's very important towards that. So let's talk about the charges now. So Puffy was convicted. People talk. I've heard a lot of talk about what he was convicted of or how much time he should have gotten, and people saying all kinds of things that aren't based on reality. Somebody was at one post, comments I was seeing saying he was found not guilty. Or he was found innocent is what they said, but there's no such thing. You can't be found innocent. In fact, he was found guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution, which is called the Mann Act. Is the name of the act, but they specified as transportation to engage in prostitution. So that's the issue, that he facilitated transportation to engage in prostitution, and then he was acquitted or found not guilty, not found innocent, of the more significant charges of sex trafficking, and then the big charge of racketeering, which those RICO charges, that's what they usually use for the mob or other major organized crime. And as I kind of noted in my last video when he was first convicted, that one was always spurious. Nobody was going for that one. So, transportation to engage in prostitution, he got convicted of 2 counts. So we need to understand that first and foremost. So what is this Mann Act really all about? We want to understand more about that. It was originally the White Slave Trafficking Act because it was about trying to protect women and girls, particularly white women and girls, from being able to be transported across state lines for sexual commerce, right? Or just other debauchery, basically keeping them from being abused. And you can imagine if that was not against the law, what kind of power and exploitation that power was exploiting vulnerable women and girls. And so they made a law to try to stop that. And because prostitution is illegal in your city, it's illegal in your state, other than a couple of places where it's regulated, it might be legal under certain regulations. It's generally legal almost everywhere. So where the federal government comes in is anything that happens in between the states, then it's the federal government's jurisdiction. It's interstate commerce is the jurisdiction of the federal government because it doesn't belong to either individual state who has their jurisdictions. Once you start committing crimes across state lines, then that whole operation to do something across state lines then becomes federal jurisdiction. So that's why the federal government is involved here, and so that's what Puff has been convicted of, and so that's what he is. His sentencing is based on that. So before even we get even more into understanding the crimes and what Puff was convicted of, let's go ahead and state what our lesson is for today for men's mind state and what we can learn from Sean Combs' situation, because there's already just a clear lesson that we need to be able to take from this. And that is that we need to move with integrity as men. So whether that integrity has to do with dealing in business, because nobody's going to want to deal with you when you cut corners and you operate in shades of gray and you're kind of shady and behind people's back and cloak and dagger. People aren't going to want to do business with you when they know that you lack integrity in how you conduct yourself and how you conduct business. People aren't going to want to be around you or engage with you in anything, whether it's being a part of social movements or community organizations or doing anything in life that might help you to progress and move your status up. People aren't going to want to deal with you because if you have a bad reputation, they don't want to risk reputational damage for themselves or for their product or business in dealing with you. And there are further just types, going beyond the obvious moral implications of not following in our moral codes and following where our God may lead us. That lack of integrity represents. It just causes so many problems for you in your practical life, right? And so you can see also having lack of integrity. We can look at reckless seed spreaders. This is why we don't respect reckless seed spreaders, these men who just spread their seed all around. You're not going to really find respect with men of substance and value because, again, you're reckless. You're willing to destroy your reputation, and I don't want to gain reputational damage from you. You are contributing to the destruction of our community. You show that you have no discipline, and you're not somebody who can be trusted to conduct themselves as a man should, right? Uh, you should have control and discipline over your nether regions or how you conduct yourself sexually. Uh, so, and then obviously the ultimate fourth and most maybe damaging way in which you can lack integrity is this particular situation right here with Puff is that you can lose your freedom. And when you don't have integrity, uh, you put yourself in a position where you can't be on your purpose. You will move off of your purpose as a man by allowing your lack of integrity to pull you away from that, because then you get caught up in circumstances and situations that you don't want to be caught up in. You get in legal dramas and lawsuits and other problems, and you can even end up in jail. And as for most of us, Puff tried to go around acting like he was a tough guy. Uh, no, I remember way back in the day where he ran up in Steve Stout's office and busted up his office, and Nas rapped about it in a lyric about so Steve's offices, and Steve thought the drama was on me, and all this type of stuff. He tried to be a tough guy, but he had a bunch of thugs behind him. He makes threats, and he's even believed. There's alleged that he attacked other rappers, had their property damaged at their house, had somebody's car blown up or something of that nature. And then the Crip who claims to have taken out Pop alleges that Puff was the money man behind it. So he always does. He always wanted to act as if he was a tough guy, but he's really not that tough guy. We can see he's in court, boo-hooing and crying, begging and pleading for his innocence. Oh, and I hate myself, and I wish I was a better man. He's not taking it like a man. He's going out weak. And but to be real about it, uh, very few of us are about that life of going in and out of the penitentiary, being locked up for years, where maybe three or four of these dudes might get the CO, the female COs to drop it off for them, but otherwise you're sitting up there locked up with just some men's for years. And the fact that you would want to go back and forth out in the back and forth to the pen doing that makes you suspect. But nonetheless, most of us ain't about that life. And the way you guard your grill against that is to move with integrity. So that's the main lesson for today. As we get back into talking about these the crimes and some of the differences between what he was convicted of and the acts that he wasn't convicted of. So our time is getting long here. Let's put a final bow on it. So again, in the act was amended in 1978 to add men. So it's not just that you can't transport women, you can't transport men either, men and boys. 86, they took out the debauchery and immoral purposes because again that was being used by prosecutors in their own way because that's just like a personal definition of what's immoral that went out of vogue as being in the law. And it was being used like against black men for sleeping with white women, misogyny and stuff like that, being abused. So that was dropped from it. And what the law is knowingly transporting the current modern law is knowingly transporting any individual, male or female, adult or minor, in interstate or foreign commerce with the intent that the individual engage in prostitution. So it's not just transportation, as the man prostitute said. It's not like it's not a crime because you're like paying for somebody's Uber and they went and did prostitution or something like that. He didn't get convicted of transportation. He got convicted of transportation for the intent of engaging in prostitution across state lines. That's the crime, is the engaging in prostitution. And then there's also or for any other sexual activity which is illicit, such as these that are named here. We won't say them uh, for YouTube's sake, since you can just read it on screen. But it's about any illegal sex related activity. All right. So, in essence, the law is primarily a federal tool for authorities to prosecute interstate sex trafficking and prostitution offenses. So, actually, to that point, I said, well, what's the difference between prostitution, engaging to transport for prostitution versus sex trafficking? They're both about moving people around for sexual commerce. And I even read the word coercion was a part of the Mann Act above. And so it broke down in these two columns. This is transporting to engage in prostitution, or the Mann Act over here on the left. Over here on the right is sex trafficking. I think the big difference is for the Mann Act, engaging transportation for engaging in prostitution, coercion can be an element of the crime, but it does not have to be. It can be you enticed somebody, such as you gave them money or some other enticement to do it, but it does not have to be coercion. Whereas sex trafficking is more about specifically force and coercion. That has to be an element. Or fraud, which is almost like force, but it's more like tricking people into doing something, and then they get caught and they're in a situation where they can't just readily get out of it. They've been defrauded into it. So the force part makes the sex trafficking a more heinous crime within the law and has a higher benchmark. The Mann Act 10 years. This one looks like you can get 15 years. Even though this AI says it can only go up to 10 years. I'm not understanding how the prosecution was asking for 11. I guess they wanted the sentences to run concurrently, not concurrently, but consecutively. Maybe that's how, because he was convicted of two counts. So if it was just one count, I think the most he could get was 10. But if the judge wanted to give him two 5.5 year counts to run consecutively, maybe that's how they got to 11 years. I don't know. But he didn't go with that. So people were saying, I was reading just ridiculous comments that people were saying he should be in jail for 20 years. He should be in jail for life. I'm like, for prostitution charges? And what I think is happening is a lot of you are very fascist minded. You want the government to have the power to throw people in jail for decades based on your feelings. That's not how things work. People go to jail based on the law and based on what they were convicted of under the law. So he can only go to jail for the stuff he was convicted of, to transportation to engage in prostitution charges, not for beating Cassie, not for um, any other assaults, not for the men. You know, we have all these stories about like maybe men went to sleep at his house and woke up with their pants off and their booty hurting, all kinds of other stuff that allegedly went down. He can't be sentenced for what's alleged. He can't be sentenced for what he was not convicted of. He can't even be sentenced for what we can see on a videotape of him beating Cassie. He can't be sentenced because of your feelings. He can only be sentenced based on the sentencing guidelines of the crimes that he committed. So I asked the AI what some typical sentences, and it was talking about up to 11 years, 10 years, something like that, up to 10 years again here. But I want to say more specifically in Combs' case, what does that look like? And based on the circumstances in his case, where he just has these two convictions for engaging to sex trafficking without any other charges or convictions, and it gave this 5 years and 10 months to 7 years and 3 months, which effectively is about an average of about 6 years. So what the prosecution was asking for, 11 years, is almost double what would be typical in this case. And the 4 years the judge gave him, people were giving all kinds of conspiracy theories. Why isn't he getting 20, 25 years? Why isn't he getting life? And giving all kinds of conspiracy theories. Actually, the judge's 4 years is a little bit low, but it's closer to what's average or what's typical for these type of charges. So the judge went a little bit low. The prosecution tried to go way high, and then the judge went a little bit low, but he still got 4 years. My understanding is he'll be out in about 2 years because of the federal guidelines. It's about 85% of your sentence you have to serve. So he's already served 14 months. He'll probably be out the next 2 years. We're going to get on out of here on that now that we've looked at this thing. Remember, our main lesson learned is integrity. That's a part of you staying on your purpose. Well, another purpose that you need to stay on is getting your finger on that like button. Also, subscribe, notification bell. I hope you'll also watch a couple of three of my videos in a row because YouTube does not send notifications anymore. But this can get my videos in your algorithm so that they'll surface to your homepage. After you've watched two or three in a row, they'll start surfacing on your homepage when I drop a new one. I thank you. I'm out. Peace.